Hello everyone and welcome back to the World Chess Championship match between Nepomniachtchi and Ding Liren. This is the second game of the Rapids. First game ended in a draw, and now Nepo will try his best with the white pieces to grab a full point and gain a lead in the match. So let's check it out. Nepo with the white pieces opens with e4. We have e5 by Ding, so nothing really changing in the rapid time format. Knight f3, knight to c6, and bishop to b5. Again, Rui Lopez is on the board, and pawn to a6. Ding goes for Morphy's defense. And will we see a marshal? Let's see what was on the board. Bishop to a4, knight to f6, castles bishop to e7, and Nepo of course declines it with pawn to d3, or rather avoids it. We have pawn to b5, bishop to b3, and d6. We have pawn to a4, bishop to d7, and now pawn to h3. So still all very standard stuff here. Castles and bishop to e3. We have knight to a5 going after the bishop, bishop to a2, and now b captures on a4. And this is all very known stuff. It's been played by top grandmasters such as Eltar Safari and Gata Kamsky, although with white. And here after bishop to d2, interestingly, we have a completely new game. So here the knight is attacked. Ding is for the moment up a pawn, but it's a doubled a pawn, and he will get the semi-open b file for his rook. So what is Nepo's idea here? Well, he will have the more active bishops, and he will probably pick up one of the pawns very quickly. So here knight back to c6 by Ding, knight to c6 going after the pawn, and rook to b8, putting the rook on the nice semi-open b file, and the Nepo just takes the a4 pawn and defends his b2 pawn. And now comes knight to d4 and bishop to c4, just going after that a6 pawn. And here pawn to c6, a very interesting try by Ding. The point is that if you go for something like a bishop to b5, which is a move that's kind of expected, then let's say b3, and yes, you can capture here, b captures, but now yeah, nothing is really happening here. You still have the a6 pawn. Okay, maybe later on you can push it, but from experience, you know that that's not very likely. So c6 is a much better try, especially for a rapid game. And now knight captures on d4. The problem with capturing now on a6 is that once rook comes to a8 and attacks the bishop, you will go back, and now d5 comes, and now you have to, suffer. Just bishop to b3, for example, to defend the knight on a4. Now let's say knight captures, b captures, and you get this position where pawn structure is ruined. You have an isolated d pawn, you have a isolated double b pawn. So not the greatest. And Ding keeps the bishop pair. So instead, after c6, we have this knight captures on d4 move by Nepo, e captures, and bishop to f4 move now, preparing pawn to e5. We have bishop to e6, going after the bishop on c4. Even though there was discussion about this rook to b5 move, it is quite beautiful because white wouldn't really gain anything by taking this knight, and then the knight gets attacked, and you don't really have a square for the knight. And even if you play b3, then the rook comes to h5, and then you're already playing a completely different game. Black would have a lot of attacking potential here. So instead, bishop to e6, but Nepo just plays rook to e1. He says, take my bishop here, and he would very much enjoy it if Ding captured his bishop, because for the moment this knight has no squares. But if you capture and sort of ruin white's pawn structure, then he will play b3, put a knight on b2, and then the knight finds a very nice square on d3. So that's why after rook to e1, just a5, Ding ignores the bishop, queen to f3, and now rook to b7. And only now after the rook came to b7 does Nepo go for pawn to e5, as now the c6 pawn is weak, the rook on b7 is undefended, so good things could happen. And here we have knight to d5, just going after that bishop here. You could also play bishop d5, and then it's sort of a forced line. Bishop captures, knight captures, and after bishop g3, let's say f5, now we could trade everything here, captures, and b3, and okay, it's perfectly fine. You could play it, but Ding goes knight to d5 instead, keeps it a bit more complicated. E captures, bishop captures, we have bishop captures, queen captures, and now queen to e4. Now, of course, moving the f pawn is impossible. The bishop would just hang here, so knight to f4. Ding just offers to trade everything here. We have queen to e5, queen captures on e5, rook captures on e5, bishop captures on c4, and now d captures on c4. And now we have rook to b4 by Ding. The problem is if you play d3, while playable, it's not all that great. G3, and how do you defend now? You have to play knight g6, attack the rook, and the rook captures on a5. You will play d captures on c2, but then comes rook to c1, and the pawn, of course, will be captured, and Nepo will just be up a pawn. So here, rook to b4 instead by Ding. Now comes rook to c5, defending on c4, and only now pawn to d3. And here you would be well, you could very easily be tricked. If you play g3 now, then there is this spectacular line that Ding had in mind of rook captures on a4. That was the true poison of the position. And after captures, pawn to d2. And now, after you stop promotion with rook to a1, there's this, well, brilliant knight to a2 check, king f1, and now knight to c1, stopping the rook from guarding d1. D1 pawn is coming next, and of course this is impossible as the d5 pawn is protected, and the e2 square and the e1 square are protected, so the white king cannot come closer. So this would be a big mistake for Nepo, but he plays c captures on d3, knight captures, and now rook captures on c6. So just trading down in a very simple endgame. Knight to e5 attacks the rook, rook c7, and knight captures on c4. We have knight to c5 and knight captures on b2. Now it's Ding who's up a pawn, but Nepo shows that it doesn't matter. Knight to e7, and now you cannot defend. If you defend, Nepo will just capture it, because if you capture back, then you just get checkmated. So instead, after this knight to d7 move, rook to e8 was played, and now Nepo just wins back the pawn. So now it's equal material, nothing in the position. It's only a matter of how players decide to draw this. Knight to d3, rook g5, rook f4, f3, stopping any counterplay here. With rook g5, okay, there were some tricks of knight to f6, so that's why rook to f4 was played. h6, rook to d5, knight to b4, and now rook to d6. We have rook to f5, rook to b7, rook to d5, offering a trade, and Nepo still keeps a little bit of pressure. Rook to d8 and knight to f6 check. Now this is the little trick in the end, sort of ruining Ding's pawn structure, but of course equal material. Of course it's a draw. Captures on f6, captures on b4, rook to d4. Now the rooks get traded off, and here we have a nice king h2, king g7, and players will now, once move 40 has been reached, just repeat moves with a couple of rook b2, rook to d4 moves, and after 47th move, rook to d4, it was in this position that Ding and Nepo agreed to a draw, as there is nothing more to be done here. So second rapid game ends in a draw. We'll see what happens in game 3. Will we have a decisive game and then a complete roller coaster in game 4, or we will see a game 3 drawn, and then who knows what happens in game 4, or are we really going to decide the World Chess Championship match with a blitz game? We'll see what happens. Crazy stuff happening here. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. See you fairly soon.